Hey there, fellow music fans. Welcome to the very first episode of Psychology of Rock, where we take a look at the psychology and philosophy behind the songs and the artists that rocked the world. My name is Nina, and although in my professional life I typically deal with much more traditional applications of psychology, really one of my favorite applications is being able to dive deep into the lyrics and really the essence of the artists that I admire the most. As a musician and a lifelong lover of music, I've always found it fascinating to try to understand these artists and their work on a deeper level out of sheer appreciation for the impact and the influence they have had on my life, which I think a lot of people can relate to, especially concerning the band that we're talking about today. So I wanted to start the channel off by talking about Rush, not only because I love them so much, but also because they give us so much to work with when we are really analyzing their music through a psychological or a philosophical lens. I wanted to give a huge disclaimer, however, that this analysis is purely speculative and based solely on my own opinion. So that being said, I wanted to go ahead and offer my thoughts about the band Rush as well as the song that we're talking about today, which is the masterpiece Limelight from the Moving Pictures album, which came out in 1981. Not only is it my favorite Rush song, but it's also my absolute favorite song of all time and has been for over 20 years, so I am thrilled to be able to discuss it today. But before we dive into quick requests, firstly, please become a subscriber if you are not one already. I would love it if you stayed connected. And secondly, please go ahead and offer your own thoughts in the comment section below. I would love to hear your own analysis, even if it is completely different than my own. It is always interesting for me to consider new perspectives, especially concerning the band Rush. So I want to start today's video by giving a very quick overview of the band and their genius before zeroing in on the song Limelight specifically. So firstly, I have to say that Rush is really a band that offers the full package. So they have these incredible compositions that are oftentimes extremely complex, yet still somehow manage to be very catchy and melodic, that are all played by masterful musicians who are each really a virtuoso at their own instrument. They also tend to write lyrics that are not only meaningful, but also thought-provoking, and in a very clever way address powerful topics and themes ranging all the way from contemporary philosophy all the way to science fiction and even pure fantasy. The most famous and iconic lineup of the band was comprised of Geddy Lee on bass and vocals, Alex Lifeson on guitar, and of course drummer Neil Peart, who sadly passed away in 2020, but also had served as the primary lyricist for the band and happened to write the lyrics for the song we are discussing today. And because Neil wrote the song, it's natural to assume that Limelight really reflects his point of view regarding fame and Rush's rise to fame specifically. So because of that, we really need to start this analysis by looking deeper into Neil. Something I like to do when analyzing musicians is to start with an evaluation of their personality profile, and normally I would use something called the 5-factor model of personality, but because so many more people are familiar with the Myers-Briggs type indicator, or MBTI, that is what I'm going to be using for this channel. Now, if you're not familiar with this, it's simply a personality assessment that looks at 4 different opposing personality functions. We take the individual and we try to determine which side they would more strongly lean towards, which gives them a classification for that personality facet that we abbreviate as a singular letter. In the end, we have 4 different letters because there are 4 different facets we are measuring. There are 16 different possible combinations, and that, according to the MBTI, is their personality type. So the first determination we need to make is between introversion or extroversion. So we're really looking at if they gain energy more from being around other people or more from being in solitude. The second determination is sensing versus intuition, and this really has to do with how they collect information. So sensors gather their facts from their environment and they rely on what they see, feel, and hear, and intuitives are more focused on meaning, patterns, and connections. Number 3 is thinking versus feeling. So this has to do with how people make decisions. So thinkers are focused on what they believe is logically correct, whereas feelers make decisions based on emotions, perceptions, and values. And number 4 is judging versus perceiving. So judgers tend to approach life in a structured way and prefer things to be organized and predictable, whereas perceivers think that structure is limiting and like to keep their options open. So based on all these factors, my best guess is that Neil was an INTP, meaning he was an introvert, he was intuitive, he was a thinker, and he was a perceiver. And this is also the likely personality type of Albert Einstein, so he is in very good company. People with this personality type are independent thinkers who prefer an unconventional approach to life. They are reserved, creative, and often seek out unlikely paths. They prefer to socialize with smaller groups of close friends and enjoy thinking about theoretical concepts. They also tend to value intellect over emotion. So to me, Neil seems to be a classic INTP, almost the epitome of this personality type. And sometimes it can be tricky when we're trying to analyze someone who's famous, because so often they hide behind a character or a persona that is really in no way similar to how they actually are. But in the case of someone like Neil, he seems to be incredibly authentic. In fact, the whole band seems to be very authentic. It's all about the music for them and not about creating personas or characters. So we can be pretty confident that the personality assessment is fairly accurate. And that doesn't mean that personas or characters can't be fun and effective on stage. They absolutely can be. It just makes it a little bit more difficult from an analysis standpoint. But we can take a look at someone like Alice Cooper, for example, who on stage is outlandish and eccentric and really over the top, yet in person is very warm and generous and very intellectual, probably one of the nicest people I've ever met. But had I not met him or heard him speak in interviews, I would have assessed his personality to be completely different because I'd be going off of that persona. But in the case of someone like Neil, again, there is really no confusion, especially with the point of him being an introvert. This is something he was actually quite open about. He stated it directly in several interviews, yet it's something that I sometimes hear disputed. And I think that's because people say that he was able to get on stage very easily and he never appeared to be socially awkward when he was speaking. But I think the confusion really is that it's not always understood what it means to be an introvert. Introverts are incredibly self-reflective and very, very observant, but they are not always socially awkward. Introverts can actually do very well in social situations and actually enjoy some social situations. They just need a lot more time to recover afterwards. So they are not necessarily socially awkward. They just need a little bit more time to themselves after being around a lot of people. I've also heard people say it's a little unusual that an introvert would share so much personal information about himself. And yes, he was incredibly forthcoming in interviews and even in blog posts. But Neil's answer for that always was that you can be an introvert and share information about yourself because you do so in a guarded way. You are protecting that information. You're only putting it out there in the way you want it out there. So in a sense, you have an invisible boundary. Something else that we can look at when we're trying to understand someone on a deeper level is to take a look at their motivation style. So artists really have two types of motivation. They can either be intrinsically motivated or extrinsically motivated. So someone who is intrinsically motivated is motivated by internal factors. So they are motivated by the sheer enjoyment of playing music, or maybe trying to push themselves as an artist and see how far they can go musically. And someone who is extrinsically motivated is motivated by those external factors. So maybe that would be fame or money or the appreciation of fans or adoration of fans. But in the case of someone like Neil, it is extremely clear that he was intrinsically motivated. He was motivated by internal factors. That's what the journey was about for him. And that's not to say that he didn't appreciate his fans or want to earn their respect every single time he played. He absolutely did. But still, still the journey for him was internal. He was intrinsically motivated. And of course, we could sit here and talk about his ability as a percussionist for years and years probably, but today we're focusing on his words, on his lyrics. And when we think about the lyrics for Limelight and consider the fact that he was an INTP personality type with an intrinsic motivation style, the lyrics for this song really make a lot of sense. The very expression to be in the limelight means to be the center of attention, which we all know that Neil had a lot of difficulty with. As an introvert, he had a need for solitude and for privacy. So to me, Limelight has the overall theme of Neil's discomfort with being famous and having so many people being interested in his life. Introverts not only prize but also protect their own little internal world. So it must have felt very intrusive for him to have so many people want to know about him and to suddenly have all this commercial success. I also remember Neil saying in an interview that a lot of his commentary about fame and celebrity came as a result of being an opening act for so many other bands and being able to observe firsthand the negative consequences that it often led to in their life. So it did nothing but further reinforce this viewpoint that he already had. So unlike so many people who would have happily embraced fame and stardom, Neil was incredibly conflicted. In fact, in the song, he refers to it all as being a gilded cage. And I don't think that we need to go through the entire song Limelight line by line. I will go ahead and link the song and the lyrics in the description box just in case you don't have them. But I do want to discuss two specific verses because I think they are incredibly well worded and I think they really are very telling. So let's go ahead and start with those. So this amazing verse says, "Cast in this unlikely role, ill-equipped to act with insufficient tact, one must put up barriers to keep oneself intact." So not only are these lines brilliantly crafted, they also perfectly summarize what he was going through. It's a confession. He's saying he wasn't prepared for any of this. He doesn't even know if he is a good fit for being famous and for being in the spotlight. He doesn't know how to handle it. And he is also saying that he feels the need to protect himself, that he feels exposed. He has to put up barriers. He has to put up walls so that he can get through it all. And in my absolute favorite verse, he says, "Living in a fisheye lens, caught in the camera eye, I have no heart to lie. I can't pretend a stranger is a long-awaited friend." I love this verse because it really illustrates how difficult it was for him to be disingenuous and to be inauthentic and to try to act like a celebrity is supposed to act. As someone who is an introvert that prizes that internal world, he felt that he was caught in the camera eye all the time, that people were always watching him and he did not have the privacy that he really needed. And in addition to this, he says he's in a fisheye lens, meaning that how he's being portrayed is very distorted. And as someone who is self-aware and self-reflective, that's something that can be very, very painful because there is that need or that desire to at least be portrayed in a way that is accurate. And clearly he felt that that was not the case. I think one of the most clever things he does in the song is to quote Shakespeare. He says, "All the world's a stage and we are merely players." And I don't think that this is his own sentiment. I think it's a lament that that's what people expect of him, to be only a performer and a portrayer, to just be a drummer and not a person. So he is saying that people are asking him really to be a product for consumption instead of just being himself. Something I've always found fascinating about this song is that musically, it sounds very, very happy. It sounds very, very upbeat, whereas when we look at the lyrics, they sound kind of pessimistic. It is showing a lot of inner conflict. And knowing Rush, this must have been something that was very intentional. And because of this, to me, it suggests that this is a fate that Neil is saying that he is accepting of on some level, that yes, there are going to be some negative consequences that do come along with fame and celebrity, but that he was willing to still continue on this journey. I think if he didn't feel that way, of course the band would have ended, but also this song would have been a lot darker musically. So I think basically he is saying that he wanted to share what he is going through, but rest assured that he is still going to continue on this path. I've also heard some people put it out there that the song itself may actually be a lot more spiritual than meets the eye, that the underlying theme is really the illusion of the earthly existence, that those who wish to seem are the people that focus on earthly things, and that those who wish to be are the ones that seek out a higher purpose. And of course, anything is possible. The only one who would know for sure is Neil, but I personally don't think there's a lot of evidence for this theory, and I also think that the song is already a very deep song. It's almost like Neil had a crystal ball. Even though the song was written decades ago, it has never been more meaningful than right now, because right now we are living in the age of social media where we are all in the limelight. We are all exposed and caught in the camera's eye all of the time. And even when we are not consciously aware of it, we are performers, we are portrayers, because we are crafting these online personas and images, and we do wish to seem a certain way to the rest of the world. So even though it wasn't the initial intent of the song, I think it is incredible commentary for what is going on right now, and also serves as a true warning for us to put up barriers and to really preserve ourselves so that we aren't completely exposed and that we have some degree of privacy. So those are my thoughts on Limelight. I think it is such an incredibly poignant and meaningful song, and it is always such a pleasure to analyze any of Neil's work. He truly was a lyrical genius, and Limelight is really the epitome of that. So I would love to hear your thoughts. Please don't forget to leave a comment down below. Also, please do like the video and share it if you enjoyed it, and I will see you next week.